Welcome to another trip down memory lane and a flashback to the decade of the 1980s. My guests recall that the new tech that came out in the decade of the 80s was learned through trial by fire. And carburetors, well, they could be diagnosed with your ears. A fun time where the music was made by hair groups. What was your favorite group? The 80s was an era, too, where the Chrysler Caravan, the Fiero, and the IROC Z debuted. You know, when the phone rang during this period, the guy said when the phone rang in the 80s, they said that about 80% of the time that the caller would become a lifetime customer. And did you know that you needed 12 D-cell batteries to make the boom box work? And of course, the mullet was the haircut of choice. Now, if you don't remember because you are too young, then listen to what your brethren who came before you remember about the decade of the 80s. By the way, there are pictures of the entire panel from the 1980s in the show notes. Hey, thanks to Shopware and Shop Marketing Pros for bringing you this episode. You know, it's as easy as 123. Shopware's shop management system, well, they allow customers to review, approve, and pay for repairs all in one place. Keep your staff and your customers safe while maintaining profits and keeping your customers happy. Learn more at getshopware.com/carm. Have you realized that your marketing looks exactly the same as the shop down the road? Your shop's different, and it deserves marketing that is as unique as your shop is. Let Shop Marketing Pros show your community how much different you are. On the web at shopmarketingpros.com. Hey, did you know that 58% of podcast listeners spend time listening with others? Interesting, huh? Sure, I understand the personal intimacy that podcast listening provides, the one-on-one experience, but don't miss the opportunity to pull up a community chair and share the listen with others.
When a carburetor came in, to the shop, I went, "Hey, Dad, there's a carb there. I'm going to go work on this fuel injection car," because I was done.
Hey, more like that in a minute. You know, are we connected, you and I? Well, I think for you, one of the most important ways to connect with me is to subscribe to my daily email. You get firsthand info on every new release that's coming up in the week. And on Mondays, you get my view or slant on something that's on my mind. Go to remarkableresults.biz/insider and get with the aftermarket community. Hey, don't forget, get your shop tour fix each and every week. Now, if you missed the live show, then do yourself a favor. Go to aftermarketweekly.com's website. Aftermarket Weekly, as you know, is streamed live every Tuesday at noon Eastern Time, and every episode is repurposed so you can catch all the goodness we provide each week. That includes a shop tour. Hey, I'd like you to become comfortable with the podcast and consider my guests and myself your friend. Welcome, Town Hall Academy. As we're talking the decade of the 80s, we do it every week right here, 12 noon Eastern and 9 a.m. Pacific. We have pictures of these guys from the 80s, and I just can't wait to show them. And I don't know who that guy is with that mullet there, but we'll introduce him in a minute. We did the 70s a while back, and it was a blast. And now we're doing the 80s today. Kevin Eckler's with us, along with his wife, Lisa, own foreign car specialist in Poughkeepsie, New York. You're onto your what number branch?
We're acquiring our second at this point.
That's what I heard. Great rumor mill. Par Marquardt is with us. Northwoods Auto Techs in Rhinelander, Wisconsin, was the National Napa ASE Tech of the Year in 2010, and also is a Napa Auto Tech trainer. Hey, Paul.
Hi, guys.
Good to see you, man. Rich Falco, instructor at CTI, CarQuest Technical Institute. Hello, Rich. Rich had a mullet so unbelievable, and wait till we show you his mullet. John Bridgwater is here from Wright's Automotive Service, San Leandro, California. And the only thing I could say about your picture, and we'll show it soon here, John, you were smoking more than Marlboros, it looked to me like. So
I don't know if we can talk about that.
I don't know. Rich, or actually everybody, I mean, did most of you start as pump jockeys? Did that help introduce you to the automotive?
Actually, kind of, yeah.
Yeah. Well, in New Jersey, you still can't pump your own gas. So, but back then it was like every car guy's first job was pumping gas. And I was pumping gas for Scrunchy Gas in Freehold, New Jersey in 1984 or 85. And that was the first shop that I worked for.
You eventually just groomed into the shop.
I was working in the shop doing brakes and tune-ups before I had a driver's license. I think I was 14 or 15 and test driving customers' cars and doing things while I was in high school.
Rich, any thoughts that you would be a CarQuest trainer today from way back then?
Back then, probably not. But my father was an automotive instructor. From day one, he said, you don't want to be in this industry. You don't want to work on cars. Go teach. Go do something. And I didn't listen to him until about 5 or 6 years ago.
Now he teaches cars.
Yeah.
Oh, that is really funny. So you were a little stubborn.
A little bit. I opened my own shop for a while and enjoyed that for a good long time, and then sold it, moved to Florida, and tried to get out of the car business, but it just kept pulling me back in. So I've been around it for a while.
Thank you, Rich. Who else was a pump jockey? Paul?
I was. I started pumping gas in 1979 at the mobile gas station 4 blocks from the high school. And believe it or not, I am still in the same location. I've never moved. My running joke is I'm still working my high school job.
Wow.
Start Pump Gas, knew absolutely not a thing about cars, but kind of got groomed into starting out with oil changes, working on Saturdays, doing oil changes, and worked for the gentleman by the name of Vern for 11 years. And eventually we bought him out in 1990 and had never moved. So someday when I grow up, I'm going to figure out what it is I want to do for a living. But till this, I'll just, fix cars.
That means you're so darn young at heart, and you just take life, as it comes at you.
Yep.
True.
Yeah. My wife says I still have a mind of a 14-year-old. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yours gives you credit. I get about a 9-year-old.
Wow. So did we have we had fuel injection and carburetors in the 80s, didn't we, guys?
We did.
Sure did. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
1986, I think, was the first year that Ford was all fuel injection.
Yeah.
And the learning curve came quickly after that, didn't it?
Absolutely.
Harsh.
Yeah.
And so you had to go to training.
In the field, man. That's what I got back then, was in the field.
Yeah.
Figure out how it works. There was no training.
No, back then it was literally trial by fire. And
there was. I actually worked for a chain called Grand Auto here on the West Coast. They're like Pep Boys. They're smaller. They did have their own training department. They did send us some training and stuff. It was at best marginally effective. I remember going to one of the classes and the guy says, yeah, look, if you unplug the map sensor, it will run anyway, even if it's having a problem. And he unplugged it and guess what? It didn't run. So,
Oops.
yeah.
Nice.
Could you guys diagnose carburetors with your eyes closed?
Literally our ears. You don't need your eyes. You need your ears for a carburetor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a vacuum gauge.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah. So I started different than you guys. I started as a broom jockey rather than a pump jockey. My dad's car was broken and he needed an engine put in it. He had an old Mustang. So I asked if I could go to the shop and hang out and watch and see what was going on, which is where I got in the way a lot. But I was pushing a broom, sweeping, cleaning up. And it was a pair of brothers that had owned the shop. Their dad had it since 34 is when he started out. So they were kind enough to let me be in and get completely in the way a bunch of different times. So when I wasn't in the way, I was cleaning tools, putting things away, running things back and forth as I needed them. The favorite spot in the shop was in front of this big old vise that was on the bench. And it was actually kind of comfortable there because of the years of the dirt grew shop muffins. They were probably about that thick. So I was like, how thick are these things? So I grabbed a scraper and I cleaned off a spot that was about 12 inches by 12 inches right in front of the vise. And then my boss walked over to see what I was doing, almost twisted his ankle, and he was like, congratulations, kid, you got a job. Walked over, got a scraper, and was like, here you go. And that's how I started into the business with scraping shop muffins.
By the way, I want to let you know, everyone sent me some great talking points, and Kevin wrote a book. And it was unbelievable. It took me an hour to read what you wrote, and he was pouring his heart out. And that was the story, to me, the most poignant part of everything you sent to me, that you said that was the turning point in my world to realize that I'm in this thing.
Yeah, I wasn't just a kid cleaning up. Suddenly I was part of it. And the things that I always enjoyed taking apart and just wondering how things work. Suddenly I had two gentlemen that were very interested in not just teaching me to replace this, but look at it. Why did it fail? What was it? What did it do? And how are you going to change something to make it different? And Art and his brother were incredible. I could not have asked for better people to work for as my first man into the job in the first situation. They were the most nurturing, caring guys. They were relationship business before people talked about relationship businesses. They knew every customer's name. It wasn't just like, hey, kid, put this on. It was, this is how you do it. This is why you do it. This is what we're changing. This is what we're going to do and what we're doing it for. And it just created such a desire in me to know and to want to know. So rather than just being a grumpy old bunch of cusses that yelled at me, they were really instrumental. They were more like great father figures. And that just drove a hunger in me to know.
That was exactly my first mentor also. He was the shop manager at the first place I worked, and he hired me in spite of myself. And he gave me a huge opportunity. And to this day, I'm still in touch with him and eternally grateful for him and a few select others throughout my life to have put me where I'm at now. Having that mentor really matters. And I would hope that in my travels, when I get back to traveling anyway, I would hope that I can somehow fulfill that position to others who I'm mentoring as well.
When you think about how many lives you touch and you never even know it, the gentleman I worked for probably has no idea where I am in life or where we have gone. And same with you guys, people you've touched through your career just by being kind and showing them something and inspiring them. Mm-hmm. It's unbelievable to think of where these people could go. And in the moment when you have time to talk to somebody versus just a little too busy, you're guiding somebody's future without really even knowing it. And my world is completely different than it ever could have been just because of the kindness of that man.
I got a story about that, actually. On the other side, I was the giver and this other guy was the receiver. We were in a very small class in somewhere in the middle of the country. There's like 6 of us in the class. And I started talking about some leadership and management stuff because I typically get off on small tangents and then we come back. This guy heard what I said and he took it and ran. And now I talk to him daily, often, not daily, but often on Facebook. And this guy has just turned his whole life around from 3 sentences that I said in a class one time.
Wow.
It's just incredible to see that.
I have a young kid with us that his high school required him to do a 2-week internship program. So I offered him an internship. He now works for me full time. He's just the inspiration to see this kid jump into stuff, the way he loves it, the passion that you can see and feel in it, the way that he just wants to understand it and do it is amazing. Mm-hmm. It's not like he's doing it because it's a job and it's what he has to do, but he wants to learn, he wants to know because he loves it. And we're able to kind of build that spark into a big roaring flame inside of him, which is incredible.
Wow, how cool is that? And you know what? There's an awful lot of joy in mentoring. Lisa gave us a secret. Kevin will never tell you that he graduated at the top of his class at RITI, Rhode Island Technical Institute. Well, congratulations for that. And you did the dealership thing, Kevin, and you thought you were on the top of your world.
Oh, no doubt. The dealership thing was a blast. I left technical school and I got an offer to work at a Toyota dealership. And I thought, this is the coolest thing ever because back then the dealer was the mecca. The shop that I was at was great. And I think that Art had designs for me to take the shop over. And I had no idea and I hadn't thought in that way. I thought that the dealership is where I wanted to be. And it was great. The camaraderie that was there, he built great friendships. Like I had said, the service manager looked like he was straight out of Boogie Nights. It was just, it was a blast. And what changed for me there was we had a change of ownership in the dealership. And suddenly it went from a really fun place to suddenly became really not fun at all. At which point I left and I went to a Porsche, Audi, Volkswagen dealership. And you can see Porsches are still breaking. Falling off the wall.
Even now.
Yeah. And I had to learn CIS injection. When I went to technical school, they were teaching carburetors and points in electronic ignition. I'm like, what about injection? They're like, it's just a passing fad. They didn't know anything about it then. I graduated in early 86. Injection was just coming out. They didn't know how to teach it. So they kind of pushed it off as it wasn't irrelevant. It wasn't relevant. So I get into the dealership and that's about all they had except for an old carbureted Rabbit coming in every now and then. So it was jump right into it, survive and learn. Fortunately, there were really good people in there that taught me stuff and then off to factory schools and I understood it. It made sense. And it was like, man, I really got the drive to want to know this stuff more. And it really ignited inside of me. And
I think that back then the dealer was the place you went if you were career minded in this industry. And I don't know if that applies anymore. At least back then, you never thought about buying a factory tool or even a scan tool or anything like that. And now I don't know if an independent shop can survive without one. So
I'm not sure I agree with you. Even back then, I've always been independent ever since day one. I worked for 5 months for one brand. And I said, I walked out the door 3 days after my birthday and it says, I got to go. I just can't hang with this. Too much politics for me, man. Way too much politics in the dealer. I just wanted to fix cars and be happy doing that.
Hey guys, so tell me about the Caravan that debuted in the 80s. Was that a good vehicle to work on?
Oh, that's a love-hate relationship right there. You know what? There's a bazillion of them on the road and they were revolutionary for its day. Mm-hmm. And we always hated to work on them. They had that, what was it, that 2.4
Mitsubishi motor in it.
The 2.6 chain motor, that's right. Mm-hmm. And that thing carbureted, and that thing was just a monster.
I can remember
everywhere.
I can remember drilling holes in the choke flap. I don't know what it was, but we did something to fix it. It's been too long. I don't remember what, but it fixed the engineering, right, Rich? Yeah.
Look at what that car did for the industry. Everybody's driving crossovers, SUVs, and minivans now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. After Lee did the Mustang, he went over to, not right over there, but he went over to Chrysler and brought that vision. And I think he had trouble trying to get that thing made. But you're right. It's the standard bearer of what was to come.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it was the Caravan and not the K car.
Right?
That was one ugly car.
I can still remember the tools to do a time-in belt by heart. It was only 4 or 5 things, and 20 minutes later it was done. But
Yep.
Hey, Carm here. Now, coming up, listen to these guys talk about the transition from carbs to fuel injection. Hey, auto repair is a high-dollar, high-value transaction, and your customer sensitivity about how much it costs and why is never more important than when you ask them to pay the bill. While these conversations can sometimes feel awkward or uncomfortable, it's important that you don't fall down and cheapen your services at the final step. Shopware's shop management platform now offers a solution that helps you showcase the value and sophistication that you've invested throughout the repair. With our innovative digital workflow, customers can review, approve, and even pay for services right from their smartphone. Let remote pay work for you and improve your customer experience. Get started today. Visit getshopware.com for more information and to request a demo. Hey, Carm here. Have you heard this before? If you need something, we're just a phone call away. But then when you need something and you make that phone call, nothing. Well, if you needed something from your marketing company right now, today, could you get their help? Or now that they've got your money, has the personalized attention just faded away? Well, we've all experienced something like this. If you want that to go away, I want to introduce you to my friends over at Shop Marketing Pros. Shop Marketing Pros is a boutique marketing company. Now, what that means is they're small. It also means that they know their clients because they communicate with them regularly. If you're tired of working with a big transactional agency who treats you just like another auto repair shop, well, it's time to talk to the folks over at Shop Marketing Pros. They are a real phone call away. Find them on the web at shopmarketingpros.com. Fellas, the IROC Z debuted in the 80s. Anybody have one?
Got a Trans Am?
You actually admit to that, Rich?
At the Jersey Shore, it was a prerequisite, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
I have to laugh because back then we were like, ooh, 225 horsepower, and now 4-cylinders have that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's a couple of them floating around out there.
Well, it's funny. My first car was a 77 Monte Carlo, and I kept going up from there. And as far as I was concerned, every single vehicle from the late 70s-ish, early 80s, they started getting really bad because all the emission controls were getting so strict. Yeah. And they didn't know how to do it to make it work right. Mm-hmm. It took until about 2005 to really get it right.
At least I learned while the manufacturers were learning. It was a learning curve on both ends for how to fix them and how to get them to work properly. Absolutely.
Right. There were a ton of people ripping the injection off and putting carburetors back on, if I remember right.
Absolutely.
Well, I remember GM instructor once told me every carburetor that came out of off the line was not adjusted correctly.
I believe that.
C3, C4 carburetors. Mm-hmm. And man, we used to do those all day long.
Just a little tweak here and a little tweak there, and they're good. But yeah, I believe that.
Yeah, I still got the tools.
I think I do too.
Yeah, that's the sad thing. I can't throw it away. Nope, someday there's going to be one rolling in that I'm going to need to do.
I think the last time I used them was about 10 years ago. We actually sent a quadrijet out just yesterday because we didn't want to deal with it. So we got a guy about 20 miles south of us that does a great job with them. He just knows these things like the back of his hand. He's got all the spare parts. So we sent it off to him. We had a problem with the secondaries drawing fuel at idle. So we sent it off to him, and it'll go back in today, but I know it'll be right.
What about OBD2, guys?
That was cool. That was cool. It was scary, but it was cool.
It was awesome. I thought it was. I mean, the first time I saw Block learn an integrator, and you're holding the oxygen sensor wire with one hand and touching the battery terminals with the other, and watching fuel trims change. That was a huge light bulb moment where I went, oh my God, there's information here. Like we used to have to ask carburetors questions, put your hand over it or listen to it. Mm-hmm. And now I got a computer telling me. I was all in. When a carburetor came in, to the shop, I went, "Hey Dad, there's a carb there. I'm going to go work on this fuel injection car." Because I was done.
You worked in the family business, Rich?
Well, I opened my own shop with my father's help, 1990, so just missed the 80s. But we still had carbureted cars coming in left and right. And we had the shop until 2004, and I got a little burnt out, and I regret selling it to this day. But it's still going strong up in Wall Township, New Jersey.
Hey, Paul, you sent me a great note about customers of the 80s, and you said to me every phone call was a potential customer versus today. Can you expound on that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about how many phone calls we're getting. I mean, it seems like every third phone call is either a price shopper, not a customer, or it's claiming your Google ad or all the stuff that we're getting now. But, back in the 80s, you knew that if that phone was ringing, it was somebody that more likely just wanted to schedule an appointment. They weren't price shopping. They didn't care. They really were looking just to get the job done right the first time.
They didn't have a way to pick this up and get prices.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. I mean, technology is great, but it's been a big thorn in our side. We don't get a chance to prove ourselves because, we get a lot of price shoppers out there, consumers that are just looking for the cheapest job. We just come out and tell them we're not it. I hate to be blunt, but that's the truth of the matter.
And what about parts pricing, Paul? You had mentioned to me when I read that thing, having been in distribution my whole life, I said, "Oh my God, what color sheet were you being priced off of?"
Oh yeah, we had green sheet or blue sheet or pink sheet or salmon color sheet. And, I don't miss the days every time you needed a price quote, calling the parts store, have them look up the parts, have them give you a price, handwriting the estimate, and then getting the customer and say, "Well, what if we don't do this? Well, how much is it if we do this?" Technology today, that has helped us out a lot. Like most of us in this room, we don't price shop parts. We quality shop our parts. We got a supplier that we know we're getting our parts from, no matter who the vendor is, and we're going to be loyal to the brand. We're just one stop and done. But we also have access to multiple part stores in a single click of a button that lets us know who has what, and we can go from there too. I don't miss the sheets, the green sheets.
I could tell you stories about that.
I bet you could.
I miss the competent parts people. We had a couple that would drop the ball. If they didn't have something, they'd forget to call us and say, "Oh, we don't have it. It'll be a week." Okay, great. Thanks for hanging me out. But most of the time, I'd make that phone call, and the parts people were right. They had the right part at the right time for the right price.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we don't have that today.
Not even
parts are a huge struggle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't miss paper catalogs at all. Looking back for this stuff, what catalog was in what page, what section? And I guess you went to the really greasy section because that was where you most frequently were in.
So how many of you guys had a catalog?
Not when the computers came out. It wasn't greasy in that part.
Oh no, just the keyboard.
How many of you guys had a catalog rack in your office?
Oh
yeah, most common catalog. So you didn't have to call the parts store. You just looked it up yourself.
It was 4 or 5 feet long.
Yep. Yeah, illustrated parts guides.
Yeah,
pictures of it. Those are great.
What about the manuals, the wiring diagrams, and the motor manuals back then? They weren't on CD-ROM yet, were they?
No, I have to laugh because in the 70s episode, they were talking about using tracing paper over it. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I never used tracing paper, but I can remember highlighting one and then getting yelled at. And then from then on, it was pushing it into a copy machine to make a copy. So then I can highlight on it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Your vacuum diagrams, because the vacuum diagrams never looked the same on the picture as they looked in the car. And if you worked on any Japanese stuff, God, they were like, 85, 90 feet worth of vacuum lines in there. They're all like right here.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Those early Hondas were just
carb Honda. Dude. Yeah, but once you got to know them, they were easy. I think it was vacuum lines 14 and 15 were the two critical ones, right? Something like that.
I blocked that from my brain.
Maybe a wise move.
Yes.
Or somebody was tricky and they put like a BB inside the vacuum line and then put it back together so you didn't know it was there. And you're going, this thermal sensor isn't working because the vacuum signal doesn't change when it warms. And someone was like, well, just stick that in there.
Yeah.
Thanks, fellas. Don't miss that.
No.
The first computerized catalog I had of any sort for it was all data, and it was on an Apple II in 1993.
And they used to send
everything was catalog paper.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember
so check
taking the
out.
discs in them.
Yeah, we had to put the discs in, and it was 3.5-inch floppies.
Yeah. And that
Yep.
system was what,
Was that the one with the
25,000 back then?
It was expensive
20
as well.
25,000. It was
Yeah.
ridiculously
Yeah.
expensive.
Right.
Yeah, I had that one too with a thermal printer, and you had to buy
Oh,
the
yeah.
paper, and
Yep.
it was not cheap.
Nope.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
No. Kevin, you do European. What do you pay for a VAS for Volkswagen? That's 20 grand or something?
Yeah, God, it's expensive. The subscriptions are crazy for what you need for the information now.
Well, let's back up to our previous conversation. How much was that all-data device back in 1994?
Yeah, I think it was 23 grand. 'Cause
Okay, so
we
comparatively,
bought one back then.
20 grand is a whole lot less money than 23 grand was back then. So are our tools really that expensive today?
Price comparatively, no. It's just still, I guess, being old, that number still sits in my brain.
It's still a sticker shock, yes.
So like 20 grand, oh my God.
Well-
Then you look back at it. Yeah, I guess if you took that and you invested it in, how much would you have made on that 23 grand if you put it into a good market or had it with a good investor? What it would be worth today? But as a kid, we didn't think that. We took our paycheck and went, race car, race car, race car. At the end of the week, you bought lunch and you built a race car, and you were
That's
always,
right.
at least I was always broke. I was building something fun, but always broke.
You were a motorhead, Kevin, big time in racing.
Oh, God, I was out of control. We were great friends in the shop and highly competitive, and we were all building pieces of junk to try to beat each other on the street. Every paycheck went into building something that something might have fallen off on, or it may have looked out of control, but God, they were... I had a friend who had a 70 AMC Rebel machine that was just ungodly fast back then. The thing was pure evil, and he inspired us to all to try to compete and keep up with him.
Wow.
So we'd work on cars all day, and then all night long we're working on our own pieces of junk, and had tons of energy for it, and every dollar went into it. God, I wish I had that energy now. And at the end of the day, I'm like, But it'd be the end of the day, and I'd spend another 5-6 hours either hanging out at a fabrication shop, learning how to... I had a friend who had a fabrication shop. I'd go work my full day at work, and then I'd go hang out at the fabrication shop. And this guy was on the early edge of building the pro street cars. He built front engine dragsters for a friend of mine. My friend's dad from King and Marshall used to race front engine dragsters. His dad had a caster wheel on top of his roll cage because more than one time he hooked off the line and flipped that thing up and over backwards. So that was a joke with a caster wheel on top of the cage. But George taught me how to look at stuff and not just see what was there, but see the vision of what you could make, what could be, envision how to achieve that point that you could see. I've been around people that just inspired me to think in different ways, not just like, here's the box, here's the book, here's what you do, but to use your mind, see the resources, see what's available, and think outside of that. And then to be able to put it together and to see what it looks like as a finished product is just, as a young guy, that just drove me to do crazy things that I never would have thought of. And then you amaze yourself that it actually worked. I really got it done. And then you just go further and further. So yeah, we street raced. I got out of the street racing when the cars were running deep into the tens on the street. It started getting really expensive. Wow. And then I stopped, and my buddies now run, I don't know, low eights. They roll around in stuff that just shakes the ground in ungodly power, which is impressive. We'll all get out to look at, but I've got a really nice house. They've got a really nice race car.
Hey guys, I want to hit a question, maybe a comment that Hans Jorgensen said about tech pay versus door rate back then. And one of you brought up a point, starting wages back in the 80s and a few of the starting wages still today. Who wants to take that?
I was in high school working at a shop making $10 an hour. And, all my friends are working at McDonald's, flipping burgers, making $5 an hour. I thought, well, that's awesome. And then a shop down the street offered me $14 an hour. And I thought, oh, I'm rich. This is awesome.
Look at you go.
Yeah. And that was 1986. I have a tech
I lived in the wrong area.
I have a tech student down here in Florida. He went to my high school class, and then he went on to Uno and got a 4-year degree, worked at a Ford dealer up in Ohio while he was going to college. He returns back to Florida, and the local dealer offered him $14 an hour as his starting salary. And this kid is a diehard Ford fanatic. It's all he would, if he gotten in a dealer, he would have worked the rest of his life there and been happy. And that pay turned him off. He's working for a forklift company making twice that, full benefits, weekends off. Everybody's complaining about this tech shortage, and you can talk benefits in the industry and millennials, whatever you want, but if we're not paying them, they're not coming. It doesn't matter. You know,
I made $3.35 an hour when I started, and when I elevated to the point of the Porsche dealership, I fought for $8.50 an hour at the Porsche dealership. So it was 88, and I'm making $8.50 an hour driving cars that cost more than my dad's house.
Mhm.
I'm tooling around in a 930 Cabrio as a young kid, thinking this is great. Of course, there was no cameras to take selfies with to send to your buddies. You were just out there doing it. But
what was the labor rate back then?
$72 an hour.
Yeah.
And I was making $8.50, and it was a fight to get that.
When I bought my shop in 1990, I think I was making about $12 an hour, and our labor rate was about $33 an hour.
Yeah.
Second shop I worked at, he kept changing pay plans, but one of the plans he had me on was 50% of labor and 10% of parts. Which is pretty generous.
Yeah,
unless you figured that the shop wasn't doing anything. he made all of his money in a C-Mart. He had a gas station. He had 2 different gas stations, and he made all of his money in the C-Mart. Mm-hmm. So the back shop was just, whatever, it was play money, something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, the $3.35 an hour, the shop was charging $32 an hour. That was in 82.
Yeah.
Facebook comment, amen, guys. Exactly. Don't make your staff suffer the same struggles we did with low wages. Thank you, Andrew. Andrew, I think Andrew hangs out here with us almost all the time. Pontiac Fiero came out that year.
I owned 3 of them at the same time, all 1984s. I actually grew to love that car. I always wanted an 88 GT, never got one, but I actually grew to love that car.
I feel like they finally got them right and then stopped making them.
Yeah, just like anything else. They refine it and they put it away.
Yeah.
They were way too light in the front.
And way too hot in the back.
Rich, you sent me a note and you said, hey, when you did the 70s show, maybe it was 8 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago, and we're going to do a 90s and then the year 2000. But you had mentioned that it was Mitch Snyder who said, wear gloves, and he says, I wish we all knew that we should be wearing gloves back in the 70s. And that comment impacted you.
Thanks to the pandemic, I'm back in a shop and my knees and back are feeling everything I did in the 80s. It's every single time I pick up a tire or pick up a brake drum, I think to myself, oh, there's that transmission and transfer case that I took out with my bare hands, on my back. So the advice to the younger guys is don't just protect your hands with gloves, protect your body, lift properly, take care of yourself because this industry will beat you up and you'll be paying for it.
Don't be a hero.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's a trans jack for a reason. It's you're not impressing anybody by yanking that thing out by hand, and you're certainly not saving yourself any money if you think you're just flat rate it and yank it out. No, just do it right. Save yourself.
Yeah, the $100,000 in hospital bills 30 years later is no fun.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Needles in your back are no fun.
That's right.
Recovery is a lot slower too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, tell me.
And hearing protection.
What?
That's the biggest thing. Hearing, exactly. I'm on my guys all the time. Now everybody's getting used to putting hearing protection on, but boy, I wish I would have worn it using the impacts.
Oh, completely.
That was good times, man. And you're right. That we didn't care. We just dive in and do it.
Oh yeah.
Hands in the carb dip, no problem.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Until your fingers were tingling.
Yeah, exactly. That stuff hurt a little while later.
Your hands get all tingly. You're like, okay.
How many times did you guys have a car on the rack all the way up and you just jumped out?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Don't let it down. I'll just jump out real quick.
Yeah. Yep. No,
God, if I did it now, you'd be picking me up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely.
Yep.
Would you do anything differently?
Well, yeah, I would have never sold my shop. I loved having a shop, and I let it burn me out to the point where I wasn't thinking clearly, and I walked away from it. So for those in the industry who are burnt out, don't walk away yet. I mean, do what you got to do to not burn yourself out, and hang in there because I think it's worth it. And I regret selling that shop. If you look carefully in that picture there's a girl sitting next to me. That's my future wife. I know you can't really see it from there. Yeah, that was my girlfriend at the time, and now I'm married, have 22-year-old twin boys, and wow. And everything's good. I'm trying to think of a favorite band, but from the 80s, the only thing that pops in my mind just because of Eddie is Van Halen.
Yep.
I mean, that's what jumps out at me right now because they were just huge back then. And movies, Better Off Dead, the Camaro and Better Off Dead. The whole movie was awesome, but that
was great.
Yeah.
How about you, John?
Van Halen, Iron Maiden, Scorpions, Harley Davidsons. I wouldn't change a thing about what I've gone through my entire life because I'm really, really happy to be where I'm at, to have the people in my life that I have now. And if anything had been different, I wouldn't be here now. I would be some other version of me. Sure, we've all gone through good times and bad times. And that picture right there, that was good times. I've always had a passion for what makes it go. That's in my bio also, by the way. What makes it go? And so because I've had that passion, I think the career path that I took has been really good. I've had better bosses and worse bosses. Nobody that was really absolutely unworkable. For the young people getting in, I think hang in there. Know that there are great bosses out there that will pay you correctly and train you properly. Not everybody is, but there are some out there that will. And don't get discouraged. Keep doing it. This is a great field to be in. I think if you put your heart into it, it'll be great for all the young people too who are interested in this field.
Thank you, John. Kevin, how about you?
So we'll touch on music first. So I see these kids run around nowadays with Run DMC shirts on, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. I saw them when they were a club band. I think it was in 82. What a wild show. Like, who are these guys? Where'd they come from? So the guys in the dealership that I worked with had a boombox that was probably 3.5 foot long that took like 35 D-cell batteries just to make the thing work. And they'd play dance music and club music as it was evolving. Oh yeah, completely more like two people to carry the thing. And then the guys at the fabrication shop that I hung out with, it was Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, all the heavy metal stuff and the hairband stuff. And I still really love all the hairband stuff. It was a blast. I mean, I had people that inspired me to and built a love within me of automobiles and mechanical things that had I not been in those places working with those people, I had some of the greatest people that I've ever worked for in my life in the 80s. And I had some of the crappiest that I've ever worked for in the end of the 80s. And I learned about myself, who to be, what to be like to inspire people, how to draw the love out of people. My dad was an incredible anchor in my life. Morally, foundationally, he anchored me really solid so that, it was the 80s. In high school, I had friends that were blowing lines of Coke in the bathroom. I had friends that were alcoholics by the time they hit their senior year in high school. So I got to witness really bad decisions and how they affected people's lives as a whole and the potential that they had as people and where they could have gone and where they didn't go. And I got to see, because of my dad built into me a feeling of self-worth and value, that I didn't have to roll with that crowd to do this thing, or I didn't have to do that stupid thing. But on the other side of that, he let me make really stupid decisions knowing that there would be consequences and I would have to suffer from them, but I would learn. Because I have major authority issues, if you couldn't tell. I think we all did from the 80s. But hey, having that anchor gave me enough confidence to take all the crazy things on that I did, to love automotive stuff. He always made sure that I had a safe and reliable transport, not just a stupid race car that killed me. I had a Toyota truck, which I wound up lifting way up and crazy and doing big tires and still modifying and all when I wasn't driving my Dart, which was a real Dart, not the plastic thing that they have nowadays. It was a 69 TTS 344 speed. There was a man's car. So the 80s were great. They were inspirational. They helped me learn about myself. They helped me have confidence in who I was, what I could learn as technology changed. I had people encourage me to learn the technology, and I saw the ability to grasp it and grow. So it wasn't like there was this new thing and it was unachievable. It was there's this new thing, and if you put yourself into it, you can figure it out. So from that point, there's nothing really that's coming along in our field that I go, God, that is beyond me. It built the value inside of me that whatever is coming, I can roll with the changes. I have the ability to do it.
Going from carburetors to fuel injection to ABS brakes to airbags to all of that stuff, we heard those warnings of how are you going to handle this technology?
Completely.
And now we're hearing that about some of the newer stuff coming out, and I'm like, we'll figure it out. We'll be fine.
I don't think anybody in this panel is the least bit afraid of new technology.
Not one bit. No.
No, my lack of fear has gotten me into deep trouble a bunch of times.
Let's just be happy we don't have a record of it on Facebook.
That was the
we didn't
part.
imagine having that back in the 80s. We'd all be
right.
Yeah, if everybody had pictures of stuff back then, we'd be dead.
Ooh, yeah.
Kevin, you got to write a book. Very articulate, very passionate. Thank you for your summary. And every time we hear about the challenges of technology, I go back to the original Jurassic Park movie where there wasn't supposed to be these little things being born on the island. And I think one of the greatest lines of the movie was, nature will find a way. And that always inspires me to look at something that could be, way out there or something new and different and say, we'll figure it out. We're entrepreneurs. We're capitalists. We love fixing and changing things. And that's where the survival of our industry is going to come from guys like you that have that attitude. And I guess one of the most important things is we have to learn to teach the people we have working for us to have that attitude. I think it's changing, not as fast as I think we would like it to change, but there's going to be attrition in our industry over the next 10 years, big attrition. And if we get the right mindsets, the 30-year-olds that are owning shops that in 10 years are going to be 40 and 45, we're going to have the greatest automotive aftermarket service industry than ever. And then comes the EVs. And then we'll have to figure that out, right?
Have a different hobby than what you do for a living. Building race cars and all hours of the night and then working on them all day, it'll burn you out. It'll kill you. Find a different passion. And not that there's anything wrong with that. Follow that, but do something different, non-automotive, to not lose your love for what you have.
Thank you, Paul. I'm going to let you take the cleanup position here. Give us your summary, sir.
Probably one of the best things that ever happened to me in the 80s was getting married in 85. My wife helped guide me from sitting in bars and playing pool and shooting darts and bowling and all that fun stuff to getting something a little more constructive. Actually, that's when I started training in the martial arts back in 87, 88, which I'm still doing to this day. Bought my first Harley in 87 and still own it. Favorite bands was AC/DC, little Judas Priest, Scorpions, all the great heavy hitters, man. It was a lot of fun growing up in the 80s. A lot simpler times. We had a lot of fun, and knock on wood, we survived it. But in summary, what you guys all said, I mean, my boss Vern, he took me on as a mentor. He was my mentor growing up into this industry. I was really close to abandoning this position. I never thought that this is something I wanted to do, but this industry just grows on you. Like Vin Waterhouse said a little earlier, once you're in there, once you get your 2 years in, you're hooked for life. You can't get out.
That's right.
I wouldn't want to get out. I mean, I've always talked that, if I sold my shop tomorrow, I'd be doing something and it'd be in the automotive industry. It's just a great times. 80s were a great time. Learned a lot back then and got a lot to learn now.
There's a lot of that going on, Paul, where guys are moving on to a second part of their long and storied career. Hey, guys, thank you so much. Kevin Eckler, foreign car specialist, Poughkeepsie, New York. He's in the center of this picture. Paul Marquardt, Northwoods Auto Techs, Rhinelander, Wisconsin. He's in the bottom right of the picture. And Rich Falco, instructor at CTI. He's in the upper left of that picture. And then, of course, Crazy John Bridgwater from Wright's Automotive Service, San Leandro, California. And there's me in the top right corner in 87, guys. Guys, thank you so much. I can't tell you this was off the charts. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Thanks for being on board to listen and learn from the premier automotive aftermarket podcast. Until next time.